Hey, thanks for coming back for another video. In this one, we're talking about insider threats, not to be confused with outsider threats. Anyway, we're going to unpack this issue for you. There's a lot changed in the industry and how we're addressing this issue, how we can take care of it within our workplaces, and ultimately make our work experience safer. So let's start off with what insider threat even is. Insider threat throughout the years has changed a lot. How this term is defined has really broadened. Historically, we've considered insider threat to be espionage, or it's got a governmental relation to it where we're trying to steal secrets or information for the benefit of a nation state, another nation state. Maybe it's through the university systems where somebody's trying to infiltrate U.S. businesses or universities for the benefit of another country, government versus government. But it's really much broader than that nowadays. In fact, there's a really great guide that DHS, Department of Homeland Security, put out a couple years ago where they get into all of this issue. And insiders nowadays are really anybody that has authorization to be in your facilities or access your information, or they have knowledge of your organization. So if you're looking at it under this context, that, okay, if that's an insider, that's a really broad definition. So if you're a grocery store chain, your customers could be part of an insider. If you are an online business, somebody coming to your website could be an insider. So it's really broad in how it's defined today, and that can have some ramifications for how we're addressing this issue today as well. So if that's an insider, well, what's an insider threat? Well, an insider threat is I'm now using this information, this authorized access to this information or facilities, whatever it is, to then threaten the organization, to cause it harm in some capacity. So team, let's unpack this a little bit for our audience here. How do we address this? How do we get ahead of this issue? Because we're largely known for the workplace violence aspect of this. That's one of the ways an insider can act out. But how can we help our folks that are viewing in get ahead of these problems?
Yeah, generally speaking, one thing that we can do is help organizations just create an awareness. You know, depending on what type of industry it is, of course, we see those of our clients that are in the utility industry. This is definitely of concern for them. And so, yes, cyber, yes, infrastructure, all of these things, but looking for behaviors in individuals, right? We talk about that pathway to violence. And so boundary probing is a big one here. Or, you know, it could be something like tailgating or someone that's constantly losing their ID and just seeing, you know, how far can they get, or maybe they don't have access to a certain area and seeing if anyone's paying attention. It could also be a cultural issue, right? So if the culture is like, it will never happen here, or I'm sure it's nothing, I mean, that is a soft target for these individuals looking to do harm.
Yeah,
no
doubt. And that's a misconception too, right? Where it's historically always thought to be on the interwebs. You know, it's a cyber problem where it's like, people are trying to do they're trying to take information, you know, and there's actually been information taken from companies to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. It's like, yeah, that happens. But I loved what you said. It's also a behavioral issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Cultural issue.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. And the pathway is still the same, right? It generally starts with a grievance that's going to happen. So it might be that grievance with the organization as a whole. So it almost in a way is a target violence too, except instead of targeting maybe an individual, it's going to target an organization. They might take it out on an individual, but it's somebody with familiarity with the business that has a grievance with the business that's still going to go on that pathway to violence. So like Stace said, there's still going to be those behaviors of concern that they need to be looking for.
There's actually this news article I just saw a couple weeks ago here locally to our area. They thought it was an insider case. Somebody ended up taking a excavator. It was part of a construction company. And a guy ended up taking an excavator and just entirely demolishing a brand new home that was built. They thought the individual that ended up doing it was employed by that organization. But sabotage, right? It's another way these kinds of things can happen. And, there's a lot of different ways these kinds of issues can manifest, but it comes back to those behaviors. They want to impact the organization. They want to impact, maybe it's even an industry, right? Maybe it's not even necessarily tied specific to the organization, but it's like they want to make a statement, say about insurance or say about whatever industry. And so they decide to carry out whatever they're going to do on a particular organization to make that statement.
So let me ask you this. What do you think, like if you were to give organizations or, a director of security or somebody in this space, one piece of advice, what is something they could do to get ahead of some of these problems or some of these issues?
A couple things. One is have like individuals such as IT or cybersecurity come onto the threat management team.
Yes.
First of all, have a threat management team, multidisciplinary threat management team. So security, HR, legal, all of the usual stakeholders, because they're specially trained to look at behavior, right? And deal with those kinds of behavior, manage that behavior so that it doesn't become, usually it's violence, but often it's the same progression. When somebody is intentionally on the progression to become an insider threat, to act out from an insider, if they're going to do sabotage, if they're going to vandalize something, if they're going to steal information through means of cyber, if they're going to take something, steal something from the organization, it's that same behavioral progression. But sometimes that behavior might be happening on the information system. So having a cybersecurity person or an IT person join the threat management team is really great. The other thing is recognizing that so many of these things are a behavioral thing. And within that, you have, okay, people can do this negligently. They know the right thing to do and choose not to do it, or they're ignorant about it. So that's the awareness piece that you're talking about, right? Well, the negligence is protecting the organization. Somebody allows tailgating.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you might have just let the wrong person into your four walls, right?
Yeah.
So making sure that people are understanding that what seems as an innocuous action can actually have severe consequences. So helping the individual develop ownership in the security of the owner of the organization so that it doesn't blow back.
Yeah. That's excellent.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. And again, like with every pathway, it comes down to general awareness for your people and what it is to look for. I think it's a great point though. The more multidisciplinary you can get your threat management team and your crisis management team, the better equipped they're going to be to handle every situation. Multidisciplinary, even if it happens to be some ad hoc members, like you were saying, that technical department being part of that threat management team and crisis management team also, maybe it's not something that needs to be addressed all the time, but being able to pull those right people in, and maybe it's going to be a third party that you bring in to help with that, that IT aspect or a GSOC type of aspect that gets brought into it. It's good to have that third party, those ad hoc members as needed.
Yeah, and the good news too is we talked a lot about behaviors, but the good news with behaviors is it's observable, mm-hmm. right? So if people know what to look for, they can observe it, they can see something, say something, all of the things, right?
That's right. Yeah. So hopefully you found something out of this video. Insider threat, I believe, is going to be a big part of the future of how we address issues related to people trying to harm an organization and or its people. But we'd love to hear from you. Put in the comments, wherever comments can go. We'd love to hear your thoughts. How are you addressing this issue in your workplace? But we'd love to hear from you as well. Reach out to us, cpps.com. Sign up for our centerfold. That's where we put a lot of this information and more. But until next time, cheers.